So we are recording now, Gerald, so beware.
Okay, I won't say anything else about my past.
I'm able to see my slide deck, title slide.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Better than looking at me.
How's everyone doing?
Doing great.
Best day of my life.
Right.
Good. It's beautiful out there, isn't it?
It is.
Amazing day.
Well,
Let's just not talk about pythons and alligators. We had that
Yeah.
conversation a moment ago.
I thought April was a pretty cool month until today.
Yeah.
It definitely has been cool.
Not as
Just
wet
a
as it
couple of
usually
months.
is. You know, you think of April showers bring May flowers, but it's been pretty dry.
That's
Like
Mhm.
Rob, I went to the Big South Fork last week to go camping and hiking, and the water, they don't advise paddling in the stream unless it's above, I think this 500 CFS, and it was 480 in April in the spring when it's supposed to be wet. So you do.
Wow.
all right. I think we can get started. Let me make sure there's no one else in the waiting room. So Ann says she needs to leave at 4:30, and she'll join by her phone at that time. So I don't think we have a real ambitious agenda today, so we might be able to get some substantial progress under our belts by then. We'll see how it goes. Does anyone have anything they want to share for the good of the crowd so far? It's just us. No one from the public has joined. If not, go ahead.
Oh, I was sorry to miss the public forum this week. I just wondered how many people showed up.
It depends on when you check the count. I looked at one time, there were 43, but of those, there were probably maybe 5 or 6 of us who were on the panel, plus a couple of folks from Buncombe County who were also participating, listening, or attending. So probably in the mid-30s.
I thought it was great. It was very well organized, and I thought it went very well.
Thank you, Ann. I really do appreciate your feedback on that too. It's the first of many more that we really need to consider. Whether it's done with Equinox facilitating or moderating is a separate matter. I think the town has opportunity to do much more than we've done in the past. With your all's help, I think we can get there and do more. It's important.
One comment I'd make is to reiterate what I said last meeting, and then I can't remember if it was Ann or someone else who recognized the significant Hispanic population in Woodfin and trying to get out some notices of some communication in Spanish. And if there's an organization that works with the Hispanic community, maybe working with them or some other known entity to get the word out would be helpful.
Agree. I think we'll have some good discussion around that. That is one of the things I wanted to talk about before we finish today. When we get down to the project update, which is the last thing on our agenda. When we get there on the project update, talk about the forum, also talk about what Ann brought up and some of the communication that I've had with Kim Williams at Equinox since then, as a starting off as a launch point or jumping off point for some discussion among this committee. Be really helpful. Anything else on your mind before we get started and dive in? All right. I shared with you the minutes to the last meeting. And if there's any discussion on that, we can entertain that now. If not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve those minutes from last meeting.
I saw no issues with the minutes, and I'll make a motion to approve them.
I second that. This is Lucy.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any nays? So all ayes. Thank you. Consideration of committee bylaws. Are bylaws necessary? While bylaws, I think, are not necessarily required, I think they are good practice for us. And as a public body, it would be important for us to have bylaws that can guide our conduct and how we operate. They do establish the roles and responsibilities of various members of the, well, specifically office holders, as well as all the membership, and provide structure for our meetings. Would like to know, get some feedback from you concerning the content. The draft that I circulated, I adapted, borrowed liberally from Buncombe County's Recreation Advisory Committee. And so with that, I can clear the floor, and if anyone would like to talk about that a bit, open it up.
I wrote in my response to the committee assignment that I feel that there should be some provision for the automatic removal of non-performing committee members. And the reason I say that is that if there is particularly in a small committee, if there is someone who, for whatever reason, is not able or does not perform their duties, it's often difficult to, for the rest of the committee members to ask them to leave. But also on a small committee, we need everyone doing whatever their assigned task is. And frequently, attendance at meetings would be one metric that could be used. I don't have a specific suggestion other than I think that there should be something written in there that says that we could refer to and say, I'm sorry, but you're just not, doing, what you joined the committee to do, and therefore we need to find a replacement.
I think that's a good point. I've worked with committees before where people did not fulfill their responsibilities, and without some known way of addressing that, it becomes a real issue. So endorse what Bob said.
All right.
I've seen a couple of clauses in bylaws. This is Lucy. One I've seen that says if you haven't attended 75% of the meetings within a year's time, and another one I've seen if you miss 90 days worth or 3 months of meetings, then you are subject to being kicked off. I don't think they use those words exactly, but.
Looking through the draft to see if there's a provision, because you all were appointed by the Board of Commissioners, it would probably come as a recommendation from this committee. So the Board of Commissioners, so this is under terms, so it's section C, and then number 5, Board of Commissioners may remove any member at any time for incapacity, unfitness, misconduct, or neglect of duty. If that's not sufficient, we can build it out, because I think I hear those who would be closest to those, to the conduct of members would be this committee. So if it's the wish of the committee to add that in, that it would be upon recommendation of this committee, I can add that to the draft.
Well, my suggestion would be that there be some sort of metric, as Lucy recommended.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what it is, but something that we can refer to and just say, well, it's not just a matter that you're not performing, but here's why.
All right.
And that makes it very clear cut. And it's also something that anyone joining the committee and reading the bylaws should be aware of.
Nice.
My question, I have employees, and I'm sure to outline expectations. I feel like it makes sense if someone is unable or is, missing a multitude of meetings. That makes sense. But I feel like otherwise it's tough to remove someone without clearly stating the expectations. And I feel like it's going to be fluid and changing as we evolve through this process.
What are your reactions to that?
Well, I agree with that. That's why I suggest that there be, some metric and not, I mean, if we tried to draft all the expectations that might arise, we'd never get done. I mean, it would be a book.
Right. I guess I feel like that's why attendance is a no-brainer, but beyond that, I think it's going to get a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I agree too with that. As far as attendance, that is the no-brainer. As far as the metrics goes, the committee is small, so if there's a participant that's not part of 75% of the meetings, that seat could probably be better filled with someone that can engage more with the group.
Yeah, that
And
feels like enough. Sorry.
And certainly there could be, some provision for, an excused absence. I mean, I've experienced it in the past where people are just reluctant to ask somebody to quit. And yet everyone knows that it needs to happen, but nobody wants to say, well, I'm prepared to vote on that, or, they just ignore it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that 75 is a good number. That's what I've seen most of the time in stuff that I've been involved with. Because sometimes with the 3 consecutive meetings, somebody has a personal event that happens in their life, a sick relative or something like that, that can impact actually attending. And it's a little bit different with Zoom, but that can impact them for a certain amount of time, and then they're back on track. And so I do think my input is at 75%. If you're not meeting that threshold, that you'd be subject to removal. Sounds pretty reasonable.
So that would be more than 3 meetings in the course of a year. So is that what we're saying? That they would be subject to a recommendation from this committee for removal that would trigger it?
I think that's it. This is Gerald. Look to Walt to confirm that.
I think that doesn't mean that the committee has to request that. It just means that, at that point, the committee can do that and say, you signed on for by the bylaws, you signed on to do this, and you're not. And if it is a sick family member or, something like that, then we can take that into account.
And, it's also important to consider that, work can actually happen in between the meetings as well. So that should be taken in consideration as well. If there's somebody for some reason or another that is missing a series of meetings, it'll be important to look at the work conducted in between the actual meetings as well.
Mhm.
I had a question about another, let's see where we are here, between the agenda and public comment portion, that is E, Parks and Advisory Committee meetings, 3 and 4. There's more, I guess, clarification for me. So there will be specifically a portion of every one of our meetings, 15 minutes for public comments. And how does that correlate with the 2-week notice for a topic to be included on our agenda? Just for a matter of clarification for me, as well as our deliverable here.
If I'm talking to specific notice of the public meeting, it is required that it be posted. There is not, and Adrian might correct me if she's, and Chris, you also have the experience here, Gerald, also. I don't think there's a time requirement to solicit that. So if someone were to show up, I guess your thinking is they may not have had time to review an agenda. Is that what you're thinking, Brian? So how does
item 3 talks about the agenda, whether that is that items, if they end up on the agenda, it's because there was a 2-week request and we agreed on that. And then the public comment, which is item 4, that there's a 15-minute allotment before you.
Got you. So 2 different things I think are happening there. So one is public comment. You can show up and talk about anything you'd like to. That's especially if hopefully it's relevant to the business at hand. But that, at least in a board of like an elected board, there is no limitation on the topic. So there's no intent or effort to limit that. So that's just if you show up and you have something you'd like to say. If you want something formally considered on the agenda, doing that 2 weeks in advance really is just a matter of logistics, procedurally, in order to get that done, to get that communicated with potentially a committee chairperson, an agreement to put that on the agenda, which would include, I think, you all.
Yeah, and that's what as far as us wanting an item on the agenda, or another group wanting an item on an agenda.
Okay.
And so who's going to manage that? I assume you, Eric, as far as the public comment side of things, to ensure that there isn't a member of the community that wants to address this group the first 15 minutes of each call.
That's right. That would be either for staff to do that, or the chairperson. The chairperson would prefer to run the meeting, and there's no claim to that throne in my part. So whoever's running the meeting would just provide for that. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak or to be heard, please raise your hand, or please show your interest in doing so.
Okay.
Zoom complicates things as far as public comment is concerned, and we've experienced that quite a bit. Hopefully we're coming out of this era, but still with Zoom, you can raise your hand or you can just open it up. This group is small enough that we may not have a great deal of attendance, at least at the beginning. So I think it'd be easy to manage.
Sure. Thank you for that.
So the public comment, I think, is one thing. But I also hear what you're saying too about the 2 weeks. Is that too restrictive for anyone to put something on the agenda? And again, this is a draft. I'm curious what the rest of you think about that. We can strike it, we can limit it, we can lower the barrier, the hurdle there to a week, to prior to the Wednesday before 1 week.
Well, I think the intent is to have the information, have whatever wants to be added to the agenda on the agenda, so that everyone could review it, maybe do a little background work if necessary. So right. I don't know that it would require 2 weeks to do that.
Yeah. And another approach to that is to just have at each meeting, maybe after the first item of business is approval of the agenda, so that if something does come up just before the meeting, the committee could amend the agenda and add that item. maybe that's just as an optional approach to that.
That's a good suggestion.
All right. That works in practice with the governing body. All right, so if we lower that limit to just 1 week prior to the scheduled meeting, but then also make provision for the approval of the agenda prior to the commencement of the business of the meeting, during which time someone can introduce another topic to the agenda. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
That being any of you, is that what we're saying?
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
I don't think that it needs to be in the bylaws, but as a procedural matter, I believe most public meetings should start with a statement of no conflict of interest.
Okay.
I have a sort of nitpicky comment regarding the bylaws. The bylaws are for the Parks and Greenway Committee. I think the first couple mentions of that committee, State Parks and Greenway Committee, and then it just defaults Parks Committee. I think maintaining the full name of the committee, Parks and Greenway Committee, throughout the bylaws would be appropriate.
Anyone troubled by that? My hand got tired and cramped. How about that?
You could contract it just a committee or make an anagram.
Okay. Okay, what else?
Well, this is also fairly nitpicky, but I noticed that down in voting, it says that on page 4, it says that a member may make a vote by telephone. Seems like that's sort of dated technology at this point.
You're exactly right. So we'll just say, we'll fix that, but it includes these types of virtual meetings.
Electronic, whatever.
What other discussion?
Another, I guess, clarity as well as potential discussion here. The mention of the quorum shall be a majority of appointed members, not counting vacancies, and a member who is withdrawn from a meeting without being excused by a majority vote of the remaining members shall be counted as present for purposes of determining. So if there is someone that has to leave early for some reason or another, how does that play out? If a vote follows their when they're not part of the meeting anymore.
A specific example that would be 4 people could call a meeting and would be a quorum, and if one of them had to leave, then you would lose the quorum.
If you don't have a quorum, you can't make the vote. You'd have to wait till the next meeting that there is a quorum.
Yeah, the way it's written now, it says the meeting, remaining members shall be counted as present for purpose of determining whether or not a quorum is present.
So Brian, are you concerned, like with Walt's example of just having 4 to begin with, and it goes below the quorum? In other words, be more explicit with this?
Yeah, well, remaining, I guess I just, as far as clear, yes, more explicit with that, I think that would be helpful.
There must be a quorum for any vote.
And that's the clause, that's the first clause of the next, or phrase of the next point. no vote may be taken without
Okay.
a quorum being present.
Okay.
But Brian, if that doesn't really capture what you're describing, we can wordsmith that differently. And if you have suggestions on how to reword that, what I'm thinking is, I didn't necessarily expect this to be just adopted and approved without some edits. And while I would like to get this behind us, I think one more pass is going to be necessary. I'll be curious what you all think about that when it comes time to making a decision. But if that doesn't address it, then we can continue to work on it. Off script, off meeting.
Okay, I think it does. Looking at the next portion there under voting, no
Okay.
vote may be taken without a quorum being present, is explicit, clarifies.
One thing I do appreciate about this particular document is it's on page 5, amendments to the operating procedures. So at any time that these don't work, this body can amend those, or amend these. And I think operating procedures is a term that's not necessarily defined. I'm taking that to mean these bylaws.
Probably should say bylaws then.
Yep, or it should at least say sections E through, or section E probably, and G. What else?
Is it safe to assume that any appointments that are made now would run through July 2022, since it says that the start of the fiscal year?
Yes, I think this partial year, I think we would consider this to begin for the purposes of 1, 2, or 3 years, which is still an open end, a loose end for the Board of Commissioners, to the year to commence in July, at July 1st. Since July 1st of each year is when a new period begins. That's what I would contemplate there. And I think I might also recommend that anyone who's appointed 2 years, let's see, I think what I've got right now is anyone who's appointed 3 years, well, then that's a first term. You can have a reappointment for a second year or second term, for 2 years or 1 year could all be reappointed for those 2 subsequent or each of those for subsequent memberships. I didn't quite say that right. What I want to do is be sure that everyone has an opportunity to serve at least 6 years if they choose to. And so I'd like to reword that language to address that. But that, and to your point, making it pretty explicit that the first advisory committee, the appointments are effective for term considerations at July 1st. Anyone can leave at any time, so it's not locking anyone in, but want to give maximum opportunity for people to participate who are serving and stepped up for this committee. It's my interest. Does that fix what you were thinking, Ian?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Under the Parks Advisory Committee meetings, regular schedules,
Yep.
Are we going to discuss, or is your intent to use that doodle poll before every meeting, or to set a meeting in a year in advance, like what's written here?
Well, my hope is that it's much more easily managed if it's a set time and date, the 3rd, whatever of the month, the 2nd, whatever day of the week, and a regular time. I think until we get our legs under us, we're not quite there. And especially from my point of view, until we have officers in place, chairperson, vice chairperson, I'd rather not commit anything from town staff. I think that's really not our call to make.
Okay, I agree. I like the idea of reoccurring scheduled meetings.
Great.
Are the commissioners going to appoint the terms? That's,
Yes,
I believe, how they do it on other committees.
Correct. That's correct. So this would be an action that will go back to the board for consideration for the number of years at the initial term, and then also writing in that those are effective July 1st. Anyone who has less than 3 years in the initial appointment would be eligible for 2 subsequent appointments, if you will, at the end of the first 2 years or for the first year. And so I have that tentatively on the agenda, most likely not for May because that's a full agenda, but for June.
So, so far, I do not hear any major changes to the bylaws. Would it be okay if we voted to adopt them tonight?
With the amendments as proposed, I think I'm okay with that.
I would, this is Lucy, I would move to make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right.
And that's with the amendments as proposed, correct?
Or
Yes.
those amendments come back for a subsequent vote to reaffirm.
I don't think that'll be necessary.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so either.
All right. All right. So we have the motion then to approve the bylaws and that there will be amendments made to that based on our conversation. I have several items then to fix, circulate those back to the group. And if something's not quite right, then we can fix that. But I do sense, as Lucy is suggesting, there's a general agreement on everything that's been discussed. And so that motion is then on the floor. And so all ayes.
Aye.
And nays? Any nays? Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Just a reminder, this was a slide in the slide deck last time. This body is a public body. The meetings are official meetings and subject to open meetings laws. And primarily, the point is that we are accountable to the public. We do provide for public comment and input into our work, which is consistent with what you all have signed up for, and I know your interest. The records that are created from this body that are shared and that are referencing the work of this body also are public record. So be mindful of that. Whoops. And then once we have the meetings established and scheduled, then we'll be publishing those so that we'll be transparent as to the agenda, the minutes from the meetings. All of that will be available to the public. We intend to launch the town's new website on May the 14th is the date that we've committed to internally. And so we will have more control of our content management internal to the town hall. So that'll help us with that, meet that obligation. Any questions or comments or discussion around open meetings, public records? It's a brief synopsis of those provisions in the law.
I have just a quick question, Eric. Once we're able to meet in person, will we be meeting over at the town office?
I think that's my expectation, but that is just sort of just logistically looking at that. It makes sense. It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything that's limiting us or binding us to this location. Except for the bylaws do say that that could be revised to say or other location.
Either way works for me. I was just curious.
Yeah, I'd like to add other location in there just because as a parks committee, I think it'd be great during warmer weather if we can meet. There's a pavilion at Riverside and at the one up here on Elk Mountain Road and at the new park. So it would be great if we could be in the parks for some of our meetings too.
Nice.
Agree.
All right.
Totally good idea, Chris.
Got it. Adrian and I are scribbling or typing furiously. Perfect. All right, then, moving on. Would like to now, as the bylaws have established, officers being a chairperson and vice chairperson. And as per the bylaws, for no discussion around secretary simply being the town administrator or designee, which would be town staff member for all practical purposes. So we'd like to open the floor for nominations for chairperson and or vice chairperson.
I'll nominate Paul for chair if he will accept.
We have a consideration for Walt for chair.
I second that consideration.
So we have a motion on the floor then. Walt, are you comfortable with that?
I am.
Before we vote? Okay, very good. So then ayes?
Aye.
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 And nays. Okay. Vice chair. Including self-nominations.
I nominate Lucy. She seems to be so well educated in the process and knows
I'll
how it all
second.
works.
I'll second that. This is Gerald.
Lucy, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'll take that.
All right. So ayes?
Aye.
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 Nays? All right, very good. All right. Moving on. So subcommittees. I circulated among the advisory committee what in our minds, staff side would be helpful to the town in an advisory capacity. And it's around these three areas. So those being communications and marketing, and then project management, specifically in the context of the Greenway and Blueway, which would be that'll be a multi-year commitment, or at least the objectives of that are covered 3 or 4 years, 3 years hopefully. Then the third being operations and programming for current and future parks. Taking my advice from this advisory committee and the responses that you provided, there was a lot of interest in communications and marketing and being a part of those efforts, as well as project management. Operations and programming, not as high on the list of interest of everybody here. And I think while that is an important endeavor, I would like to suggest that we focus on the two committees rather than the operations and programming as a subcommittee assignment. Decisions around operations and programming and budgeting for parks and those obligations of the town will come back to this whole body just of necessity. But I think that's my take, and that's the advice I'm receiving from this committee, is that we focus on communications and marketing and project management. Does that run afoul of what anyone was hoping to hear?
I don't think that's a bad idea. This is Lucy. There's not much to operate or program yet, but I bet that as the months progress and we are nearing implementation of these facilities, that the ideas of programming will probably start to become more exciting. And I could definitely see people like Brian being more attuned to what would be some good ideas for the Woodfin community in that. But right now, there's just not that much to do yet. I could be wrong, but that's my impression.
We also all know our own strengths, but as a group, we don't know very much about, or at least I don't know much about everyone else's strengths. And so it seems like letting people step up and say, this is what I'm good at, would be the most efficient way to go about it. And as Lucy suggests, it's it's going to be fluid.
Mhm. All right, that makes sense to me. What other discussion?
I think if we don't have a subcommittee related operations and programming, how can we still include it, whether it's on our agenda, on our plan, or within one of the other subcommittees?
I see it, Brian, so to fill the silence, as I see it, I'll be working with Walt to prepare each agenda. It's possible we could put as an agenda item any consideration, anything that's coming up regarding operations and programming. And part of that, I think, just like walking off Pope Park, for example, is the disrepair of some of the amenities in the park, and inclusion in the budget would be something. If we wanted to use a bank for some, a pollinator garden or something like that, or somebody comes in from the school wanting to partner with a town on something like that, or French Broad River Academy, as they have done, I think there'd be an opportunity to bring those updates and requests back to this advisory committee through the normal agenda.
That sounds good to me. I like that approach.
Yeah, I would imagine that each agenda would probably have an update from these committees as well, to fill people in who maybe are sitting on one and not the other.
Nice.
Going back several years, there was talk about trying to monetize various parts of the park too by, for example, getting a nursery or a landscaping business to come in and adopt a certain portion of it, and in return getting their, getting a sign placed there. And that could be happening relatively soon and would seem to fall under operations.
Agreed. And so I think, again, if we keep this as part of our regular discussion, then I don't think that we will be putting this aside. As Lucy stated, it may become much more prominent a couple of years down the road when we have more assets to program and more opportunities, so that we don't lose sight of it. That's why I put it on here to begin with. So it's always on my mind, just town staff, and also preparing budgets and spending dollars. I'm accountable for that. So I think it will necessarily come back to this committee frequently. Is anyone uncomfortable with what we described and decided here? It seems like we've made some decisions. Anything more to add? Talk Greenway and Blueway then. I'll give you an update from town staff and what's going on here at Town Hall. Some of these things, especially when we get to Riverside Park, you will be familiar with. Others maybe not as much. So currently underway and what we're working on, just overall project, we're working with Craggy Mountain Line. There's interest from the leadership there, from their board members in particular, to nail down a lease of the right-of-way for the rail line. There's nothing, I think we've had some handshake agreements and a very close and cozy partnership with Craggy Mountain Line in the past. But when it comes to rights-of-way, there are some provisions in, I believe it comes from the Federal Rail Agency. I think there's a rail agency that dictates how rail lines and encroachments on those rail lines can be, what can be agreed to and what can happen. So we have a draft agreement and lease agreement from Craggy Mountain Line General with a request to get back to them. As you probably are aware, in Silverline Park, we're actually building the train platform currently within the right-of-way, which extends 25 feet on either side of the rail line, the tracks themselves. I don't know if anyone has any experience working on railway right-of-way leases or agreements.
I don't have any experience working on the leases, but I have experience working with the railroads. Okay. And they can be the most contrary, difficult organizations that you would ever have to go up with. So whatever lease you sign, I would suggest that you make it, very much in the town's interest. And not to say that Rocky or the board at Craggy Mountain Line would, ever be as obstructionist as CSX or NNW and Norfolk and Southern. But I would leave myself plenty of room to do anything that you might think you might need to do.
And so I know that Equinox will be a part of that discussion, that review process. And any of you who would like to be part of that also, I would be most appreciative as we get into this. Walt, I hear you. That was your voice, I think.
Yes, it was. I'm sorry, I've got a little light that comes up on my screen. This is only my third Zoom meeting, so I'm not sure how other people see it. I know that Lucy's been announcing herself, so perhaps I should as well.
We do get the yellow light, but I've only got like view up, so let me put the whole group up. All right. Anyone else I can run that by? Cares to look at it?
I'll take a look at it. This is Gerald.
Okay. All right, very good. So Adrian and I and the mayor have met with Rocky just for a first pass and more exploratory type discussion. And then he brought a draft agreement, and I've been looking at it, and similar to you, Walt, with the point of view, obviously from the town's point of view, how might we want to use this? But I appreciate the assistance on that. Okay. The town's board did adopt a naming rights policy, which is an umbrella policy for all town assets. From there, then Riverlink can align their procedures for their fundraising efforts, which may lead to and result in naming rights for different amenities or features of parks. So we've got the groundwork laid there. So that's done and completed. That was accomplished at last week's Board of Commissioners meeting. Happy to share that with anyone if you have interest in it. We've not published the document yet on the website, only the staff report that went with that. Silverline Park, the construction administration meeting was last week, and we learned from Baker Grading and driving by also just visually, you can see that sidewalks, driveways are nearly complete. I was by there today, and the wetlands now there's been some clearing of the wetlands area to begin and prepare for plantings to go in there. So making good progress on the site work. Vertical construction has been more of a delay and still more delay. The construction of the train platform in particular, the foundation is a tricky matter, and that's a very technical term. The piers that were screwed into the earth to hold up the structure, a couple of those needed an extension. So this has been ordered, which delays the construction a little bit further. The crews are scheduled to begin on May 24th. Following the completion of the train platform, they'll move immediately with no gap, not pulling any crews away from the park to the boardwalk, which extend over the wetlands, and then finally to the pirate ship. The pirate ship, also having some discussion around materials for that. So it was envisioned as being entirely lumber. Now we're looking at some composite also. Have checked with the playground safety inspector, who says that composite works just as well from his point of view. And so that's the way that we're going to proceed. We're waiting. This week we expect to get some quotes on materials costs, and we know what that's going to look like. That's going to be a shocker, with a quick turnaround time to go ahead and move forward on the pirate ship, moving that into at least ordering materials.
One thing to consider about the materials, in addition to the substantially greater cost of the composites, is that some composites could get really hot in the sun for kids that are barefoot playing on it.
Okay. And slip resistance was the other thing that or skid resistance was the one that the playground inspector noted. We are still looking to complete the first phase of the park, and I'll have a slide in just a moment to show you schematically where that is. First phase by the end of the summer. We were thinking previously the beginning of the summer, but it's before Labor Day. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail in just a moment. Riverside Park expansion on the wave. The design contracts are now signed, executed. We hosted a public forum last Thursday night that you all are aware of. We talked about that a little bit as far as the attendance. We have some collateral material and some materials. So Anne was asking the question specifically about translation. So a follow-up conversation with Kim Williams. She has a translator who has developed a Spanish version of the survey. She's also working on a English and Spanish poster to then prompt readers to go to the survey and provide their input. So we'll post those in different areas. And I think this will be something that I'd like to talk with subsequently to a communications committee. And we didn't really close the loop on that, on the committees. We'll go back to that in just a moment. But would like to pick your brains on how we might best disseminate the word on the input opportunity for Riverside Park, how people might like to see that programmed, and what amenities they look for and how they might use the park. Be really useful and beneficial information to have. And I don't know if there's anything on your mind in particular at this point to discuss around outreach.
I'm happy to, I'm parked now.
Okay.
I'm happy to connect with, we've got a kind of a core group of Spanish speaking families at the elementary.
Yes.
And kind of get the word out through them. And I don't really know how, I know there are a lot of trailer neighborhoods around, and I don't know if there's like a central office for those, or if there's a way to kind of post, because I know a lot of our Spanish speaking families live there, but thinking of those who aren't associated with the school,
right.
I don't know necessarily how to connect in there other than, just kind of posting things randomly on doors or mailboxes, or kind of just having a ground game to connect with people.
Yeah, I think the ground game is what's really rather critical, and what I know we've grappled with on some other matters, town matters as well. And even with census outreach was a challenge there. But there are stores, there are businesses that also are patronized by that community, or are actually geared for that, or marketing to that population as well. So I think there is some on the ground work that can be done. Curious what you all think about that, Coral.
Are we able to perhaps put a sign out for Woodfin Elementary as they're doing school drop off and pickup?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because that might be a way, parents are sitting in the line. We know that they're Woodfin residents.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's a QR code, or if actually they're, it's like a real estate box and people can pick up some information, either in English or Spanish. I don't know, all that to be determined. But if we have access to that real estate, that might be a nice way. And then people can opt in on their own to
yes,
be educated on it.
We can definitely do that. And I know the children that are attending school full-time now, we can stick something in their homework folder and get it home that way. I think it's pretty safe to assume, well, I think it's worth it to send it home to every family on paper, Spanish speaking or not. And then to have some, we can, maybe even send it home digitally with families that are at home, so that they could connect through their children's learning platform.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely have the ability to reach every family by phone and by paper and by email.
That's right.
And I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but my wife doesn't trust me with money, so I ask a question first. Within water district, are bills sent out via mail? Eric?
Yes,
Water bills sent out via U.S. mail.
they are. Yep.
Yeah.
One thing we did in another community in which I've worked was put a flyer in all the water or utility bills, and that may be a way to reach pretty much everyone in Woodfin has.
Right, that's a great idea.
Right, great. And the town partners with Manna Food Bank for a food distribution once a month, and that's really targeted toward that particular population as well. So they're driving up and receiving food. So that would be an opportunity to pass in a flyer. We pass out a flyer also. And we also have worked with Catholic Charities, trying to lay some groundwork for some direct public assistance. And there's a network to tap into there that would be to our advantage as well.
ABYSA has done outreach in both English and Spanish for a really long time, and they've been a great partner for us. Of course, we have a lot of soccer fields, and so a lot of those families are familiar with our facilities. But that's another one to go down to. In my experience, so I'm of Spanish heritage, and I don't speak Spanish that well. I speak it a little bit conversationally. A lot of the Spanish-speaking families around here really react a lot better to meeting in person. I know it's hard right now with public health guidance that we have and stuff, but I find in those situations is when you get a lot more information from them. But I do think it's great to have information that people can take back with them, because especially in that community, people like to discuss it with like their extended family, with their community that lives around them, and really like process the information before submitting the comments that they're going to submit. A lot of times when we do public forums, similar to what we did last week, people who've been following things a lot, they have a really good understanding beforehand. A lot of folks in the Spanish speaking community may be getting this for the first time because it's not been available in Spanish to them, or there just hasn't been a directed outreach. So as things open up and allow, if we're able to do something that's maybe in person, I think that would be really beneficial.
That's great. I did want to circle back just a moment. Now that we have the chairman designated, for subcommittees, the folks who had indicated that communications marketing was their first choice were you, Chris, Coral. I'm thinking that would be your first, just making assumptions there, and Anne. And so those three would be the ones that we would actually ask to serve on the subcommittee from communications and marketing. Lucy, Gerald, and Brian then, and Walt, you'd also indicated project management, but we'll keep your hands open to for the chairmanship, and you're welcome to join that and join in the effort if you wish, but not wanting to overburden. It was four of you, the three of you in particular, that we could actually make those assignments formal. So with your permission, your blessing, we would have Chris, Coral, and Anne, communications and marketing. Lucy, Gerald, Brian, project management. And you can just nod in agreement, or you can, I don't know if we need to formalize that.
This is Gerald.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you. Gerald?
As chair, I'd like to be kept in the loop as, however it's convenient for you all on what any of the committees are doing.
So Walt, I think you and I can tag team on that too, and be plugged in to all of these and participate in some of the discussions as long as it doesn't get out of beyond my ability to keep up. But I'm with you. I'd want to stay pretty much lockstep and be a resource to these subcommittees as well. So if that meets with your approval, we can certainly accomplish that. So we're going to move forward with that structure then. I don't hear anyone saying it, crying about that and saying no. We're good. All right. So I think I've got a little bit more to talk about with the public forum in a moment. Part of grant application, towns applied for $400,000 part of grants. That's Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. Those are highly competitive. Don't know what will come of that, but highly competitive. A Water Resources Development Grant. We applied for that. The town applied for that at the end of December. We're expecting announcement of awards in May. On the Greenways, I think we are in the home stretch for the preliminary design contract. The contractors signed the agreement. It's now working its way through. I don't think, Chris, I didn't ask you if you had any updates ahead of this time, but I think that's still working through the mine shafts of the county in the approval process through the attorneys for signature there.
I haven't heard any update on it. I know that once it goes through that process, sometimes it goes really fast and sometimes it doesn't go really fast. So,
and Carla said you'd be putting out a press release once it is executed. So if you don't know that it's done, then I think it's still working its way through.
Yeah, I just spoke with Carla earlier today and she didn't mention anything about it, but I'll talk to her tomorrow and I'll ask her as well. And she may have an update that she just hadn't shared with me.
Sure. So we'll be looking for that very soon. And the design work to begin shortly, expecting at least the preliminary idea and plan was that design will take 9 months for the Greenways. And best case, we could have the Greenways constructed by the end of the first half of 2022. That's all subject to change now as information becomes more clear from the county. I'll certainly keep you all apprised of that. We are looking to design and eventually construct all formerly three segments of the Greenway simultaneously or sequentially. So all part of those contracts. Any questions, comments around the Greenway Blueway project in total? Silverline Park, the red dashed line just north of that, or north of that on this slide, would be phase 1, which would include the pirate ship, the playground, the wetlands, the train platform, as well as parking. Talking with our designers about having electricity available for food trucks eventually on the programming side of things. So trying to think ahead on that. Also charging stations perhaps for vehicles. But the river bank side of the park is what still will be lagging. And we hope to have that completed by the end of the calendar year still. Any questions around the visual on that? Budget not changed significantly since the last time we saw it. You'll see in the lower right-hand corner, we still have a funding gap of about $3.6 million overall based on the estimates, the cost estimates that we've got. So we do have a pretty healthy contingency budget on portions of this, especially when it comes to Greenways. So again, as those engineering estimates now through the next round of design occur, those construction estimates will become more clear. And hopefully we'll be able to reduce those contingency amounts as facts become more clear, as information comes in. We have opportunity now for $600,000 in grants. I did not change the funding gap, but that will reduce if those are awarded, big if, and that will reduce the funding gap to about $3 million. working with Riverlink now to establish a formal target for them. And so I've had preliminary discussions with Garrett and thinking we might be in the $1.5 to $1.8 million range. So that's where that stands, but details to follow on that as we work that out. Questions, comments around the budget? I love the numbers, but not everybody does. Public forum was hosted, facilitated by Equinox. They moderated Town of Woodfin. We introduced and provided some context for Riverside Park. We're talking about the whole of Greenway and Blueway. A portion of that is Riverside Park. And so then that set the stage for Equinox to describe the plan and to begin or to make the solicitation for public input. Riverlink talked about the partnerships between county, Town of Woodfin, Riverlink, and our funding partners. They're hosting the survey. Of course, the donations may be funneled through their website there. Based on some of the questions that came through the Q&A, we should have had the county as part of this too, so a lesson learned on that. People were interested in Greenways quite a bit, which is nice to hear. And the Greenway runs through it. Public input continues. These are hyperlinked. I'll send you the slide. I did send you the slide deck. The public forum was recorded, so you can access that. It was about 45 to 50 minutes in total. The public survey continues to be open to the public. We're keeping that open for a minimum of, well, if we're looking for about 90 days from now. The first 30 days hopefully will coincide with the formal project kickoff on the design. And so hopefully we'll have substantial information gathered by then. And then we'll continue to collect that over the subsequent 60 days following that. Public questions, comments. There are links still to gather additional comments on the project. Those all hosted on Riverlink's website. We're sharing that on the town's Facebook page, as is Equinox. So we're looking for a great deal of guidance and help and assistance and support leadership through the communications subcommittee. I feel like we take stabs at communication. We don't really have a communication strategy, formalized yet. So looking forward to that good work. What questions do you have about the Greenways and Blueways public forum? Thanks to you if you were able to attend. And so then that just lines us up for our next meeting. Any topics we might have left off this time that we should talk about? What's on your minds is what I'm interested in. I know Walt will be as we put together an agenda. What's on everybody's mind? What are we not talking about that we should? What are we talking about too much that we shouldn't? Etc. So Brian?
As far as the subcommittee structure, procedural elements, expectations, what are your intentions? How, as far as formulating that a document for the group to review?
Well, I think not necessarily a document. I think I would like to have an exploratory discussion with each of the two subcommittees and then go from there and see what we need to produce from that, which might be in the form of something that's written, a narrative, what this subcommittee is about. So have some comprehensive discussion around what we could accomplish through these subcommittees and then what we realistically should accomplish.
Is that a topic for next meeting?
I think that'd be a good idea. Reports back from those subcommittees and what we've done, and then more description around what those subcommittees are about and what they are looking to accomplish. That's what I'm hearing you say, I believe.
Yes.
All right, okay, good. All right.
One point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
With as 3 people on each subcommittee, that should fall outside of the public meeting requirements
Yes,
whenever they're, doing anything.
yes. It would, unless you're participating. Now that we're thinking that through, because that would constitute a quorum. So we have to think through that, Walt. How can we be sure that you are in the loop and informed, and yet we don't cross that line? Good point.
As far as leading each subcommittee, what are your thoughts there as initiating efforts?
Yep, I think that would be, I would expect that each of those subcommittees to appoint a lead. Who's the primary spokesperson for that committee?
Okay.
I don't want to do all the talking. I'd much rather hear from you all.
You could put us in breakout rooms and we can discuss among the three, the two groups, how we want to, what we kind of see needing to happen. Is that appropriate at this time?
For this meeting, you think, Ann? Is that what you're thinking?
Sure. I can do it if it's, I don't know what time it is right now, but it seems like the sooner we can figure out what, some things to do, the better.
Maybe,
especially as far as the communication goes with connecting with folks outside of.
My intent was to send out invites and gather the groups, in particular with marketing and communications. Unless you see this differently, I was hoping to connect you to loop in Rose from Riverlink, as well as Kim Williams from Equinox, just to participate and to be part of that conversation.
Sure, that makes sense.
It does. And I'm going to have a conversation with Rose tomorrow, just so
Perfect.
I can further educate myself on what she's done to date.
Nice.
And my wheels are turning as far as timeline and master plan on the comp side, but I don't want to step on her toes. So I'd like to have that conversation first with her. And then, I can update Chris and Ann on what I've learned from her and where she's at and where we can add value and support her and divide and conquer from there.
That sounds great.
Okay.
And so I do see a couple of doodle polls in our future. All right. What else is on your minds today?
I wanted to ask about the scheduling. I know we touched a little bit earlier on figuring out the balance of 2021. And, I definitely am curious what the vision is as far as getting that established, just with summer and kids being off and, just vacations and such. It would be nice sooner rather than later to get that organized. Did you have a thought on that, Eric, as far as when we pull that together, or is it based on what the commissioners?
No, it is not. Well, it is not. I think there is a general idea that this is a monthly meeting, maybe times when it's more frequent, but I will take the cues from this committee. What I've seen so far is that this is a bit of a sweet spot, perhaps, that sort of ends the day, sort of spills over into earlier evening. So it kind of fits for most people. The one it doesn't is Uta, who's one of our alternates so far. And so then I can work with Walt and we can, so I think the end of the month is working well. That works well for me because we have our construction meetings around Silverline Park at the end of the month. So I have fresh updates for this group, and the project management team will have some fresh updates from that as well, is my hope. And it also follows the Board of Commissioners meeting, which is the third Tuesday of each month. Okay. So I'd be looking for this, looking at how this is working, coming together in my mind's eye. It's end of the month.
Okay.
Perhaps it is this Tuesday of each month, the fourth Tuesday.
Yeah. I think that sounds good based on your comments. That follows your construction meeting and the Board of Commissioners meeting, and it seems to have worked this month anyway, because we have good attendance. I do appreciate that everyone has a different schedule and trying to round as diverse a group as this is up and have them all meet at one time is challenging. But if the fourth Tuesday from 4 to 6 seems to work, that may be a starting point.
You know, this today happened to work well for me, you know, with young kids in the house. Sometimes, you know, next Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, for example, we have three baseball games at 5:45. So, you know, 3 to 5 is something that would be, you know, easier for me to pull off as far as late in the day, as far as an afternoon meeting goes.
Yeah, I'm in the same predicament come fall when my teenager is in volleyball season, and I'd like to be able to do it all, be with her, but also be in attendance here. So the 3 to 5 is certainly something to consider.
And that works for me too. This is Gerald. I don't have any young children. I'm retired mostly, so I'm pretty flexible. As long as it's not early in the morning or late at night.
Certainly. And for those that don't have children, I know you have other things that are going on that are priorities as well. So, you know, please share if there's any conflict or.
I'm definitely not opposed to keeping it at this time. I just know that I won't be able to make the June or July ones at this time if we moved from 3 to 5, because I'm actually brushing up on my Spanish, and right now the classes are Wednesday afternoons from 2:30 to 4:30, and then in June they changed to Tuesday afternoons from 2:30 to 4:30 until the end of July. So I wouldn't be able to participate in this call, although I could definitely still do some work during that time if that works for everybody else.
There's no magic with Tuesdays. Wednesdays could work.
Wednesdays are hard for me because we have a monthly multimodal commission that I'll have to attend a lot of times. It's the last Wednesday of the month. So if it's not on the last Wednesday of the month, I can swing it.
All right, so seems like Tuesdays might be a winner and temporarily would be a challenge for Chris. But as you said, the work continues. And so sound like we've reached somewhat consensus on that, Walt, and
I can be available at any time. You know, this in fact might be, you know, good for a doodle poll to let everyone fill in all the options that they can or can't make. And then you publish the results, and we could, you know, instead of, you know, you making the decision about when the meeting is, at least all of us could see what all of our options are and see if we can, you know, bend around that a little bit.
all right, 3 doodle polls coming. 2 for every person, 3 for Adrian and I to put together. What else?
I know that's a tough challenge. Thank you for your flexibility there. I wouldn't want to deal with that task. That's a lot to pull together.
It's funny. What else do we need to talk about today before we bid adieu? All right, well, thank you all so much. I really am inspired by your enthusiasm and the work that I think is going to be in front of us. I feel better equipped that you're here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.